Well, in honor of March being Women's History Month and today being International Women's Day, we want to introduce you to the forgotten story of a group of ladies who literally made music. They built Gibson Banner guitars during World War II. Now, there's a book out about their story called Kalamazoo Gals. The book signing was last week at Retrofret Vintage Guitars in the Gowanus section of Brooklyn. Joining us now, John Thomas, author of Kalamazoo Gals, and Mamie Minch, head of repairs for the Retrofret. Welcome, guys.
Glad to be here.
Talk about the book for a minute. The Kalamazoo Gals, I could say it, in Michigan, World War II. Now, you're saying you found out that these ladies went to work at the Gibson factory when the guys went off to war.
That's right. Over time, Gibson had denied, even its in-house personnel director and historian, had denied that Gibson made guitars during World War II. And I found two things. One was a photograph of some 70 women sitting out in front of the building, and the second, Gibson's old shipping records showing that they built 24,000 instruments during that time. So I had a mystery. Tracked down a dozen of the women in that photograph, and then wrote a book around them.
So they never acknowledged the fact that these women worked there?
Not until recently. Even in 1973, Gibson published a history of its company in which it reported it made no guitars during World War II.
What did most of these women go on to do with their lives after they left the factory when the men came back?
They went back to being homemakers. That's where they started. They did a few years of work, and then as gender roles were at the time, and most women expressed some regret with science, they went back to raise a family and be a homemaker.
Tell me about the guitar itself, the Banner guitar. How is that different from, let's say, a normal Gibson guitar?
When the women walked into the factory in January 1942, at the very moment that Glenn Miller's I've Got a Gallon Kalamazoo was #1 on the pop charts, hence the title of the book, a little banner, a little golden decal on the top part of the guitar that said only a Gibson is good enough was plastered on there, and it disappeared in 1945. So they have a marking, these guitars. If you find one of these guitars with that little golden banner, you know it was built by women.
Only a Gibson is good enough.
That's right.
Now, Mamie, how did you come to work at Retrofret and be in charge of repairs, no less?
Well, I began as a client. It was always my favorite shop to go to. It's this kind of magical oasis. You know, as a young woman who was a serious instrumentalist, I loved that I found a shop of guys who took me seriously as a client and as a player and treated me like an equal. Anyway, so I started to go there and hang out a lot. I fell in love with a guitar that was way out of my price range and literally sang for my supper. I worked it off. So I've been doing repairs there for 5 years, and I've been head of repair for 3.
You have a lot of folks come in who look for these vintage guitars. I know a lot of people are so into the vintage vinyl records now, and I mean this whole vintage thing is so in these days. I mean, how do a lot of folks come in and out of the guitar shop?
For sure, yeah. We get some big names, and we get some names you haven't heard of, but you've heard their music. I really love local clients the most. Sort of people who live in Brooklyn and are either professional or amateur musicians. How
unusual is it? You don't really see. I know you have other women who actually work at the shop as well. Are there any guys who work there?
The office is full of guys.
I was going to say, no men allowed in the shop.
But the power tools are really run by the ladies.
Right.
We have a staff of 4 in the repair shop, and 3 of us are women.
All right, before we go, I want you to play us out a little bit, can you?
Sure, I'll play you a Maddie Delaney tune.
The floor is yours. That's going to do it for News 4 at 7. I'm Scott Stanford. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Good night. Nice.